Hey everyone, we're hitting the home stretch here. Isn't that exciting? We've been talking a lot the last couple of weeks about different types of visualizations. We looked at mostly line graphs and column charts. Obviously, we've reviewed these in sort of a theoretical way as well, besides looking at them through the Google Visualization Playground or the Google Visualization Library. But there is one major type of visualization we haven't talked a lot about yet, and want to make sure that we address it, and that is maps. Choropleth maps, as they are called, choro for color. Colored maps are obviously a really big part of visualization, though they can often be misused, as we know. Wanted to show you guys, kind of building on some of the SQL stuff that we looked at last week, and our use of Google Fusion tables, how you can make really nice interactive, quality interactive styled maps. So the first thing that we're going to do is look for some data, and I'm going to go to the Google Public Data Explorer. And I'm just doing this because I thought it would be nice to look at some, sort of a different type of data. The Google Public Data Explorer gathers information from a whole bunch of sort of global NGOs, places like the World Bank, all over the place, and makes them viewable. And I thought it would be, since we were looking at unemployment last week, and of course this month's unemployment numbers came out this morning, that it might be nice to see this in a more global perspective and see how we can do it with mapping. So you can see here that I am able to kind of add time series, add unemployment series to this, and obviously this is being built on a Google visualization, but we're not going to make a line chart out of this. What we're going to do is we're going to show just unemployment rates, let's say Europe versus the United States, right? Get sort of a global picture on it. Now, you'll notice if you go up here that there isn't actually a download option, and indeed there isn't a download option, but what it does give us is the data source. And so I'm going to head over to Eurostat, and I'm going to look for the underlying data set. And is it here? Nope, this is an explanation, so I think I'm going to find it under main tables. And again, the question of sort of how you find data, this is kind of how you find data, right? I mean, there's a lot of sort of poking around and following links and following leads. It's not like it's all centralized in one place, though obviously that would be nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this unemployment rate by sex. I actually think this will probably give me a total option, but again, I don't really know, right? So this is one of the reasons why kind of keeping track of our process and what we're doing is important, because it's not always obvious what exactly we're going to get. So this looks pretty good. I've got a range of countries in here, and I'm going to go up here, and I see that there is a save option. And not surprisingly, it's going to give me a whole bunch of different things. I'm actually going to go for the XLS in this case. I might, let me see. Why don't I go for the TSV, see what happens, right? I do like to keep things in sort of open source formats. So I'm going to create a new folder, again, in our sort of typical fashion. I'm going to call this Global Unemployment Map. And most of the work we do today is actually not going to involve JavaScript and HTML at all. It's actually going to be almost entirely in Google Fusion tables. So you still want to have that repo, but just understanding that it's, mostly we're going to be working online in this case. So here we go. I should be able to unzip this. And I'm going to go ahead and open this in Notepad to begin with, again, in TextEdit, because we do have that issue sometimes where opening things in Excel can cause problems. So I just want to look at it in a program that I know, let's just say this, I want to look at it in a program that I know is not going to alter it at all, right? I want to get a true view of it. So somewhere around here we'll get to TextEdit. And indeed, this looks pretty straightforward. We see, okay, so we've got male and female in total here. So that's cool. I think what I am going to do is I am going to actually I'm actually going to compare this. I want to compare this to what I would get out of the Excel, because one of the things that's going to be important for us is we're going to need to be able to match up the country names in this file with KML. You guys may or may not remember KML. We've discussed it actually a few weeks ago. It's keyhole markup language. It is a type of markup language that describes geographic shapes. That's what we're going to leverage in order to create our chloroploth map. So I'm going to go ahead and come back here, and I'm going to try downloading the same thing, but I'm going to go for an XLS format, and we'll see. We'll see what makes sense. So, as I say, it's not always it isn't always a completely straightforward process. You got to kind of poke around for information and see what you get. Oops, looks like I already had this open. I think it's getting confused because of that. So let me go ahead, and I will take the bit without footnotes just so I can peek at it quickly. And of course, this is an Excel format, so I'm going to open it in Excel. I'm going to open it anyway. Oh, that's from last week. All right, so what do we get here? So what I notice about this is that in this case, you see I have total. This seems to contain only the total figures. And it has the names spelled out. When I look at this guy, oh, well, can you please just open me the text edit again? I don't have to go looking for that. When I open this in text edit, I can see that I am actually getting something different here, right? In the country code, I'm getting a two-letter code. This is probably, this may be something called this, there's a CIA, yes, that CIA, 2- and 3-letter country codes that are available that often we find sort of country data indexed by. I think in this case I'm actually going to go with the Excel format, because having these written out, especially written out in the sort of US spelling, is probably going to make it easier for me to match them up. Typically a lot of American data sets have the CIA 3-letter country code, and we don't want to end up recoding our data if we can avoid it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new version of this, and I'm just going to call it, that is extremely long file name. No flag. You could actually get one with flag, and I'm going to call it edit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up a little bit, right? So I've decided that I'm only worried about 2013, so I'm going to ditch all of the data prior to that. I am going to delete all of this kind of extra metadata, anything that is not going to be mappable, because I just want to actually, I have decided I just want to map the individual countries. And then I can go ahead and do this. Now, we saw actually, sorry, before I delete that, okay, we see that there's a key down here that says that a colon means that the data isn't available. That's important, right? That's significant. We can't just kind of ignore the data because we don't have it. And so very often when we do this, we end up in these situations where we need to have what we call a flag value. So for them, the flag value is colon, but the problem is that colon isn't a number. And ultimately, when we determine the scale for our countries, we're going to need to classify things in terms of numbers. So in this case, because -1 is an unemployment rate, because -1 is an unemployment rate that we know will never happen, right? It will never be a legitimate data point. We can use that as what I like as a flag value, and we can use that when it comes time to color code our map. We can use that to indicate that there is no data, to create a sort of no data category on our data set. And that's really important because you can't just sort of ignore those things. And of course we can't make the value 0 because 0 is theoretically an unemployment rate that a country might have. So now we have this, we actually see we have the United States in here, which is kind of handy because if we want to do sort of a comparison, we can see where things fall. So now I am going to save this as a CSV because again I want to just make sure that I don't end up with any weird formatting issues in here. And so I can choose in my save as, somewhere down here I can just say comma separated value. You saw that in this we have like these different types of CSVs, Windows versus MS-DOS. Don't bother with those. You again want to keep this as simple as possible. And it's going to say I can't do everything that you think I can do. That's fine. I'll save that. It's sort of the same thing. And now I'm going to move up to Google Fusion Tables. So we already had this experience with Google Fusion Tables. Once again, it's going to be in our drive. Oops, wrong profile. No attention to the profile behind the curtain. Okay, and this looks a little bit more familiar. I am going to create a fusion table. And again, a fusion table is just a spreadsheet, so I'm going to go ahead and upload my data file. Oops, I want this guy. This is my CSV. Again, it has correctly noted that this is a comma-separated value format. And now, actually, I noticed now that I didn't put a header row in here. In deleting my data and sort of cleaning up my data, I got a little hasty and I got rid of my header row. So I'm going to say none, and then I'm going to add that header row back in Fusion Tables. Again, it's not completely ideal. So I'm going to say Eurostat unemployment 0314. It's Pi Day. No, wait. Next week is Pi Day. Today's the 7th. Okay. See, I'm a week ahead. Next Friday is Pi Day. Hopefully you guys will all be excited about that. We won't have class, so I can't bring you Pi. Okay, attribution page length. That's simple enough. I'm going to choose this guy. Edited to show only 2013 data pulled from .xls with Okay, so I'm actually noting the exact file format that I pulled this from because we saw that the TSV and the XLS actually don't have the same data in them, right? And that's another thing that I want to point out here is that different data formats are not always equivalent, both in terms of sort of their usability to us, but also potentially in the terms of the data that they include. So that's something to keep an eye out for. It's one of the reasons why we like to emphasize the sort of translatable nature of all of these data formats, because sometimes somebody might say, oh, well, I can get it to you in this or I can get it to you in that. I've had cases where people have sent me Excel files that contained more data than they thought they did. So it's something to be aware of, right? You want to do your homework, right? You want to do your reporting, make sure you got everything that you can, and that you know what you're getting. Okay, so I have my table here. This is pretty straightforward. Now, the one thing I want to point out here is what's going on with these yellow highlights. So Google Fusion Tables, like most spreadsheet programs, recognizes a number of data types. And in fact, one of the ways that we can see these data types is by going to the change columns. And we'll see that in this option, there are 4 data types. We have text, number, location, and date time. So location is not something that your average Excel spreadsheet will support. And in fact, when we see this yellow highlight, that's a sort of typographic visual cue that the program says, hey, this thing in this column I recognize, I think this is a place. And that's going to be handy for us, often just sort of at the outset in terms of seeing what kind of data it recognizes. It's not a complete solution, and we'll see that in just a moment. But just to let you know that this location idea is available in Google Fusion Tables, and it's what allows us to make maps from it. It's also what, if some of you were reading a little bit further in the Google and in the SQL documentation for Fusion Tables, it's also what lets us do geographically based queries. So Fusion Tables, we've been looking at things like, the dates and things like that, give me everything after 1980. But with geographic information, it also supports geospatial queries where we can say, give me everything in the data set that's within 1 mile of this particular point. And that's a hugely, hugely powerful thing to be able to do. So you can see how this is sort of a really great jumping off point for some of this robust mapping and data analysis. So we're going to take a break, be back in a minute, and we'll look at how we actually make a map out of this data.